So we'll start with the AdEx partner. Toby, can you introduce our company?
We founded AdEx Partners actually yesterday, 11 years ago, as a management consulting company. We are working intensively in various different industries like automotive suppliers, pharmaceutical, industrial equipment, retail and consumer goods clients. We have developed a service portfolio tailored around an holistic transformation management approach, which typically starts with the discussion about the business strategy, the business model, then the required business capabilities and the resulting enterprise architecture and data value methods. And this is also, from our perspective, very much needed when you start discussing what should be the value of an ERP implementation, ERP upgrade. How do I make that successful? It's always this balance between what is needed from a business capability perspective. How can I enable my people, my culture, my leadership style, and how is that then reflected in the enterprise architecture? And we're doing this since 11 years, rewarded as a hidden champion and several times in the different areas of Best of Consulting. We are truly independent from any IT solution provider or other service providers, and always come with a significant experience in quality management, project management, setting this type of projects up. And we are all rolling up our sleeves and really doing this type of projects on a daily basis. And we hope you will enjoy the session over the next 45 to 60 minutes.
Okay, when we talk about ERP transformation, so there is a couple of topics to be considered, and many clients of ours are in the different positions or starting positions. Some of them have just one system, which is clean, which is upgraded. Some of them have multiple ERP systems, non-SAP, end of maintenance. Some of them have multiple SAP systems also on the different release versions. And as we know, SAP and also other ERP vendors are promoting their new products. They want to have money. They are forcing the clients to move to the new version, and specifically SAP with their S/4HANA. So our clients are confronted with this reality, with this expectation, and have to do something. And of course, as you can see from this world cloud, there is many things to be considered. So of course, is it really worthwhile to start now? Can we do it later? Because it's very costly. The licenses cost a lot, the implementation project, and some clients, they just have completed or they are just completed their SAP ECC journey, which they have been doing for last 10 or 15 years globally. And then when they say, okay, let's do it, so we have to do it someday, whether it is the 2027 or 2030, for SAP, they need to understand what will be the target state and how do they get on it. So will they go to the cloud solution? Is it a public? Is it a private? Is it an on-prem? And then depending on the target state, they need to understand also how they are going to migrate to this target state. And of course, there is a different colors or different possibilities with the blue field or green field or brown field. And then they need to understand as well what is the state in between. If they have complex organizations with multiple countries, brands, units, usually they don't go the big bang unless they do the technical conversion over a long weekend. So they need to understand, maybe they need to focus on finance or in a kind of reporting layer or consolidation layer. So all of those questions are popping up, and some of them more, some of them less, depending on the starting position or the complexity of the client, on the business as well, or on the industry where the clients are. And that's very important to address, and we see that the clients are really need this help to have the structured discussion around those words that you can see here, to help them really to prepare this phase of selection of an approach, of a target state, of the roadmap. And then once they already know what they want to achieve and when, and more or less how they need to get prepared for it, they cannot just start immediately a project without preparation. And once they are in the project, the transformation mode, they need, of course, certain structures, certain governance, certain approaches which help them to do it in the proper way and achieve the value as Toby explained. Any questions, comments to this first word cloud before we move on? I don't see anyone is raising hands. I would move on to the next one, Toby.
Yeah, what we have developed over the last several years are different areas you really have to take care on in order to set up an ERP project in the right way. First of all, you typically focus on a kind of scenario verification where you say, what are actually the capabilities that I need to enable with an ERP or with an application solution, and that might be core ERP focus or some add-on focus, something where you say, hey, in future, I want to enable a certain business functionality that is really value delivering, and that will define the application scope and also the scope in terms of team setup, organizational setup, what are all the elements that you need to foresee in the project. And then it's very important to work on we call it project readiness, so everything that is related to the government, the methodology, the planning, the tooling, how to manage the project in an operational setup. And then by clarifying these initial two questions, it's really about setting up a transformation office that can manage, support, steer, guide, and facilitate decision-making, risk management, issue management, action tracking, and everything that is needed in order to make the project happening according to plan, according to time, according to budget. The other three areas, like enterprise value case, yeah, it's important to define what do I expect from an ERP project, what is the future value of the business functionalities and capabilities that I put to production. And for sure, sometimes you have to identify the right people in the organization. You have to manage that the capacity is available and the resources are available. And sometimes you also have to select an implementation partner complementing where you need skills or capacities. And then you have to form a team of kind of a digital leadership behavior and supporting the innovation. And we always try to set up projects for ERP in these 5-6 dimensions in order to have the setup for an implementation and realization project done in the right way. Do you have questions so far? Then let me start by explaining what we understand under scenario verification. So typically we develop the approach based on what is the strategic intent of our clients, what is the strategic ambition, change in the business model, changing in the geographical expansion, growth, M&A topics, whatever is on the plate from the business strategy perspective, and we try to identify what are the critical capabilities enabling these strategic needs. And based on these business capabilities, you come up with a complete set of what is needed on the process side, what are all the elements that needs to be implemented on the ERP side, what are all the functions that you have to enable, and this is basically defining the full scope of such an ERP implementation or ERP upgrade project, as Martin has described it in this word cloud topic. And from our perspective, the very critical success factor in this is you have to have the right resources in this strategic thinking included, and you have to manage these stakeholders very well, because they will drive actually the scoping and the value that you can realize with an implementation. So the selection of these participants is really crucial. They have to have these open mindset type of people who are enabling, who have a certain creativity to really define the scope of an ERP project, and who are able to have this can-do attitude to say, yes, we want to achieve this, and we find creative ways in order to get the planning completed, in order to get the list completed, and have really the open mindset of driving innovation through this entire ERP journey. That is, from our perspective, very crucial that you get these type of people into your projects at the beginning, in order to really define the scope and define where can I benefit from innovation. And then Martin, you are going to present about the project readiness.
Correct. And unless there are some questions, I can move on, and your lower part of the slide with the for project or projects foundation is actually a good start for me, because when you know already what is your target state and when you need to go, or when you want to move to S4 or any other ERP target solution that is approved, then you need to also do some homework before you start really the preparation of the project. So we need to do the program setup, and there is a couple of dimensions on that. Of course, this is the organization, the program management, also the methodology, very important. We'll discuss a little bit about it later. We need to also think about how to define a kind of template or a model company. So what is a level of standardization and harmonization that you want to achieve, and what is the definition of it before you start the implementation and then rollouts into different units or brand or countries. Important thing is also to understand your overall roadmap with the business and IT initiatives. We very often see, okay, there is an ambition to start S4, but parallel to that, there is an e-com project going on. There is a selection of PLM software. There is an EWM or warehouse management implementation, or CRM implementation, which has, of course, a very high impact on the S4 with the shared data, with the shared processes and integration, and of course, usually occupying the same resources on the technology side, on the business side. So this has to be really aligned, and very often isn't, and then you have the issue with the resources or with the overall target architecture. And there is also a big topic around the process organization and data organization. We see our clients are at a different maturity stage in this, specifically on the process side. You can see the processes are usually in the old versions, whether it is Visio or Excel, very much fragmented, and we even observe it in a very, let's say, well-structured industry like automotive or industrial equipment, when there is an engineering approach and you would expect actually everything is perfectly documented. You have all the ISO norms, all standards, but it's not. So really, the homework has to be done on the process side, on the process model definition. And the other aspect is, of course, the master data organization or the data organization. Here we see there are, of course, always the key data objects, as you know, when you are interested or working in the ERP space with financial objects, with material master, with the business partner. And we see that very often the data organization are not existent or very fragmented, and there is no approach really for a centralized and well-governed governed data management approach. So without that, it is really difficult to start a project. Of course, you can think, okay, let's just take an SAP MDG or any other MDG tool, so the master data governance and all will be fine. But without this strategic alignment and the process and organization design around this data governance, it doesn't make sense really to take on the tool selection and the implementation. So that's very important. Very often, the organizations, they have to move to SAP for the reasons we already mentioned, but they have also another organizational initiatives like redesign of the organization, implementation of the principal model, or any other organizational changes or optimizations which they have to implement and they are willing to implement. And this has to be also aligned very much when it happens. Is it before the projects or parallel to the projects? So the project or the ERP program is able to take proper assumptions regarding the target or the organizational model. Will there be any consolidation of the legal entities? Will there be a new unit entity? Will there be any move of the principal, for instance? That's just examples from my discussion even today or yesterday at one of my clients. So very, very important to do this homework. And then when we talk about methodology, you see on the upper right side, there is a snapshot from the well-known SAP Activate. That's not the only methodology which is used in the ERP projects. Of course, SAP is promoting this. Some big implementation partners are developing their own implementation methodology. They call it hybrid agile, or some decide just to go for a waterfall model, so the pure waterfall. But more and more clients, they are willing to try some kind of agility or agile methodology in their ERP program, and this is what we'll talk about a bit later.
There is one question, Martin, on the chat. The question is who sets up the transformation office, and is an ERP implementation really a program needing a program manager and not a project manager? So actually two type of questions.
So I would probably let you answer the first question, and I would answer the second, if it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean the transformation office is really needed if you consider an ERP implementation as a program, because you have multiple partially independent projects where you try to implement a broader and larger scope. Then typically you need a transformation office where you have the capability to manage different projects under one transformation umbrella. And then the transformation office typically is set up by the program management and not by the project manager, because you have independent project managers for different aspects of the transformation. And the transformation office collects not purely the status, but is also very active in order to shape and prioritize future upcoming initiatives and try to validate this against usually the business strategy and the value realization of an implementation. And then the transformation office comes into play to really have this strong linkage to the business strategy and the and following the value realization and taking decisions according to value. And then Marcin, do you want to pick the question on program versus the project?
Yes, absolutely. So you can see here, I hope you can see my laser pointer here pointing to the middle of the picture. So you see all those activities which are going hand in hand with let's say SAP or ERP implementation. Here example is starting with the model company or template, and then you see, just reading out loud, you have the alignment with the parallel projects, the software selection, process owner organization, data cleansing, finance consolidation. So you see they are really projects. So that's why you need the program manager. Of course, if you have a small scale project with the technical conversion, which is not really requiring a lot of interaction with a lot of areas, and then you can think about the project manager. But even at one client where I'm doing the QA and they are relatively small company and doing a technical conversion, it is still required a kind of program-oriented approach, because even if it's a technical conversion with the Bluefield or Brownfield tools and approach, they have a lot of parallel topics which they have to address. So I would tend towards the program approach with parallel projects. I hope it answers your question. If not, you can raise your hand and we can talk. Okay. One thing about preparation or readiness phase, as we call it, it is not to be underestimated. And of course, depending on the company complexity and magnitude, it can take between 6 and 12 months to run this preparation phase or readiness phase with all those projects. Of course, when you have a small company with one country, one business unit, and a limited number of products and business scenarios, then it's easier. But typically with this bigger transformations, we see that those initiatives are running for a longer time. And you can imagine the data organization, process organization, cleansing and preparation of the data, knowing the complexity of ERP, then takes months and quarters. So that's why it is important. The other thing is the understanding of the methodologies. I think it's important, and of course SAP is pushing the SAP Activate, then the big five is pushing their methodologies, but it's important to understand if there are any limitations. Usually what we see, the methodologies are focusing on the core application, which is being developed or converted, and this is where the project structure is quite well defined. When you go to this surrounding areas, which is the architecture, the overall architecture, infrastructure management, change management, I mean the organizational change management, including training, then we see that the project structures proposed or accelerators there are quite lean, and you have to actually develop many things from the scratch or try to reuse your best practices that you know from other projects. And the other topic on the left side is the interim scenario. So we see many companies, when they say, okay, let's start the ERP transformation, they only look at this target state, which is good. And Toby explained also the approach how to define this target state. But they keep forgetting that before they reach the target state, which means all the companies, all the countries, all the brands are on the new system, whether it is one or multiple instances in the production, they have probably a couple of years ahead with their deployment roadmap. And then it means there will be a new world and an old world, and they have to coexist and work together. And very often they figure out only with the first deployment, okay, we are actually not everyone is on S4 or on Microsoft, the new version. We have to talk to the old world, and then there is a discussion starting. So how do we do this interim scenario? New interfaces, new processes, mapping of the data, split organizations, etc., etc. And when you want to do the industrialized rollout, so really after having a good, strong asset of a template or a model company, you really want to speed up your implementation, not to repeat your history with 20 years of implementing ERP, the previous version. Then you really need to be prepared to have this interim scenario also covered in your standard approach, and you just take it and plug it in instead of just discussing and wasting time in the deployment. I don't see any questions, but if there are any, Jan is raising hand. Here we go.
And actually, you mentioned methodology a couple of times. So actually, I'm wondering what methodology would you recommend as to your clients? Like, is it rather an agile one or a waterfall or a hybrid or SAP Activate, or is there one which you would recommend to standard? Usually.
Yeah. So for my projects, and Toby, please weigh in. We see that SAP Activate is okay. It has been developed as well, and it has an agile component as well in the build phase, in the first part of realization phase. So I think it's good to use, and it covers the examples. Of course, when you talk about other ERP systems, then you need to see if other suppliers like Microsoft, IFS, they are providing their own methodologies. Typically, it is implementation partners which provide their methodology, and we see that the hybrid methodology makes a lot of sense, but has to be planned and executed with a high caution. So it cannot be, and we discuss it just a bit later, so it cannot be that we just say, okay, we do agile and that's it, and we start doing something, Scrum Master, whatever. It has to be, in terms of ERP, very well considered and very well analyzed. What is the methodology support, what is the structure, and what we can take as a best of these two worlds. And I think we'll come to this also later. In taking into a consideration that usually ERP is a very interconnected system, so you cannot really just do a small increments and set them live, right? Maybe it's true for finance or purchasing, but purchasing will never go live without finance. So you have already some integration which is required, and the same goes for master data and interfaces. So that's why it has to be really, really well considered and really well prepared, and it's independent if it's SAP Activate or hybrid agile or whatever methodology the implementation partner or the company is choosing. You need to take a few weeks really to understand what's in store, how you can do it, what is your understanding, what is your level of skills, and can you do it for this build phase? Are you ready? And the rest we talk about later when we do the questionnaire, and also we will share a bit lessons learned.
To me, you have to bridge two things. I mean, there is one big advantage from any agile methodology, also in an ERP context. You see the results early, and you can discuss in Scrum teams and in the agile teams on how to continue, how to refine, how to adjust, how to get the best out of the ERP system while developing your user stories and refining them. But on the other hand, you have to serve two constraints around it. Typically, ERP implementation projects are complex because of all the dependencies between the different processes. And having said this, any ERP project usually takes quite some time to complete and to be rolled out to all the legal entities and countries where clients are operating in, meaning there is a high interest from the top management to understand the status and the let's say the effort curves, the burn rate, and the budget consumption, and on the other hand, the value of this. So that means any agile methodology has to also find an answer on how to serve top management reporting in the way on which milestone do we achieve? Are we on track for the different milestones? Will we achieve our rollout sequence and planning, which is typically more kind of a waterfall or outside of an agile methodology, a frame planning that you have to serve, and which you typically use in order to answer also the questions towards the top management. And you can combine it with a good product increment planning and release planning in an agile methodology, but you need this framework around it to really define stage gates and the methodology that is serving the purpose of milestones, achievements, and reporting towards the top management. Martin, do we want to continue a bit, because that goes in the next direction?
Correct.
The organization governance and the transformation office setup, at the end of the day, the actual tool is less important, but the tool has to deliver certain, let's say, comfort to Scrum teams, Agile teams, to the project management, and to the stakeholders outside of the project. And this is typically critical, where you have to set up a central entry point. Everybody needs to be committed to work according to planning based on potentially user stories. You can leverage agile methods, you can leverage Jira, but you also have to extract the data out of these type of tools in order to serve for status reporting, milestone reporting, outside the project reporting. And that is really important, that whatever tool base you choose in order to build your transformation office, your project management office, it has to be integrated, serving the reporting purposes and serving the team purposes. So managing an agile team, but at the other hand, being very transparent, being very open on this is what we have prioritized, this is where we are, this is our backlog. So all these typical status information has to be consolidated and has to be available, that everybody has access to the full transparent reporting of the status of the project. This is absolutely critical and important, that that there is no information hiding in order to really motivate people and to have them enabled working in such an environment and in such a setup.
Yeah, and I think important thing here is to add that independent from the methodology, whether you are agile, partially agile, or completely waterfall based, we see always the same challenges here, namely having a consolidated project plan structure, which really covers all the areas. Probably some of you may be surprised or might be surprised hearing that, but in the several quality reviews we have been doing recently, we see that the work plan is really rudimentary, with maybe focus on the core application, because the plan is maintained by the implementation partner or by the application partner, but the other topics are not really represented properly or not represented at all. And there is only just one pager presented in the steering committee. So, and the other part is the resource plan or resource management. That's also something which of course required a lot of legwork, because when you multiply the number of tasks from the plan by number of resources, by number of months or weeks, then you come up, of course, with the large number of data points which you need to maintain. And there we see that project management team, they don't want to do it because it's time consuming. And sometimes PMO does not have the proper tools. And then the project management is moving on a little bit blind, not knowing really if the resources are available, if they are overloaded, if they are occupied by the other projects. So might seem very strange, that if you think there are many professional project managers also certified in different tools, including PMI or SAFe or whatever, but really those two aspects are very often neglected, and then you really don't know what you are doing, or you have only limited visibility on your scope and your readiness to embark on the next stage, as Toby said, and also you are getting by surprise or gotten by surprise, experiencing that your key resources are not available because they are delegated to the other projects in the portfolio, which were deemed more important than yours. So without this visibility, it's really difficult to proceed. And it seems to be a common sense, I believe, for everyone in this call, but it's not a common practice. Okay, then I would move to our Menti poll. So that's the question I would like to ask to the audience, and you will be able to post just one short line with your, let's say, one lesson learned, and we will just create dynamically a kind of word cloud and reflect a little bit on that one. So I will stop sharing and post the link into chat so you can use it, and I will present the Menti. Just a second. Can you access Menti? Yeah, I see that there are some words coming up. Very good. Let's see what Menti will do with the word cloud when we have many answers. Okay, I see the limitation of a number of characters because there is a saying backlog gets bigger and bigger, I guess. So the last word has been truncated. Okay, so let's wait 10 more seconds and then we can start commenting on those because I see some inputs are being still made. Okay, very good. Who wants to comment on backlog gets bigger and bigger? I don't know if you can unmute yourself. Is it technically possible? Isaac, is it possible to unmute or the users can unmute themselves?
Yes, they are able to unmute themselves.
Okay.
Please feel free to ask your questions.
Or just comment to your what, yeah. Because we see many comments which I think we could also relate to the work we have been doing in the project. So expectations, for sure, the waterfall. You know, it is a waterfall. It means, okay, waterfall is the only answer. We should go waterfall. So maybe someone can comment on that one.
I can comment, Stephanie Wald speaking.
Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I can comment on the planning method.
Okay, perfect.
I think waterfall and sprint planning as per the Jira, it depends a bit on the organization. Personally, I have also made the experiences that you may want to need both. It depends very much how the management expects you to report anything. So I could imagine that for the teams, you could do sprint methods, maybe Kanban or anything, but mostly the management expects to get progress if they're not fully on agile methods. So you could also do a little bit of waterfall in the sense that you maybe take the items, the Kanban items, articles, and tell them, okay, it's not yet finished. We estimate it's at about X% completion, and therefore the overall completion is around XYZ. So it depends very much on the management. Therefore, I was just mentioning planning method because I believe, there could be a difference.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. That's really, really interesting. Okay, anyone else want to speak up? I am aware of the fact that not everyone can do it for the sake of time, but maybe there is one or two other courageous person to speak up on their comments. Otherwise, we can comment, Toby and I, on what we see here. Okay, so I would maybe pick up in the interdependencies. I think that's a quite interesting topic when you see that these teams are planning for themselves, and when they have the PI planning, there's a good chance and platform to discuss the dependencies and linking the user stories, the epics between each other. So I think that's the institution or the setup or a platform of the PI planning, and this plan for yourself and plan together or share your planning, I think, as they call it in the agile methodology, is very helpful to address those interdependencies. So I think that's an interesting point here. I don't know, Toby, if you want to pick one or two for discussion.
Yeah, I think the decentral decisions will be interesting, because in the Scrum teams, you typically take the decisions in the team, but in ERP context, they usually have an impact potentially in other teams. So you have to find a way that over product increment planning, release planning, these critical key design decisions are aligned across the different Scrum teams. You cannot decide on an evaluation method in finance that is not in line with purchasing or with the supply chain. And these dependencies have to be resolved also in this decentral decision-taking process.
Okay, maybe I will pick up on structure. So if we talk about structuring the scope, that's, I think, very, very interesting. And I have been just supporting one of the clients to structure properly the ERP scope for the first template or core model release. And you can see after they have done the training on Agile, they are still confusing and mixing up the concept of epic, capability, feature, user story, and task. So depending on the team you look at, whether it is a sales or finance, they have a very different granularity of epics and user stories. You see that some of them do it quite okay, so they link epics to some kind of process chains or process scenarios, so grouping really several process steps, whereas some others actually should take the epics, they make the user stories out of epics, or maybe the other way around. They define epics on such a low level that they should be actually user stories, and then they have just one-to-one relationship, one epic, one user story. And then some of them, they also design or define user stories on a level of an individual configuration setting in the system. So they say, I don't know, setup of incompletion procedure in the order, or setup of posting schema for some value chain transaction, etc. So, and the user story effort estimate is 0.5 days. So we see really that it very much depends on which team is doing that, on the level of experience, and because everyone is doing that, there is very often not a central governance and alignment on this leveling. And you see, like I said, some teams are doing that very detailed and very granular, and missing maybe some concepts like tasks or related definition of done criteria. And some teams are doing that in the right way. It's also depending on the implementation partner. We are also surprised that some bigger implementation partner also are lacking skills on the individual team level to define it right, and also align between these teams. So this is where we see also governance. So the need for the governance and need on this cross team alignment to make sure that the structure is right. Because if it's not right, then of course you have issues or challenges in the PI planning and in the execution of the sprints. Okay, so thank you for your answers. Then I will switch back to the presentation, where we also have prepared a couple of lessons learned. Just a second. Are we good in terms of timing, Isaku, or?
Yes, we have about nearly 15 minutes or so.
Okay, so we try to cluster this lessons learned on the agility at ERP into 3 areas. So one of them is the understanding of the agile way of working. The other is the scope and backlog definition, a little bit linking to the topic I commented before on the structure, and then the sprint planning and sprint execution. So there's a first part of the realize phase, or we can call it a build phase. So we see that even if people think they took an agile training or safe training and they hired a scrum master, it is very often not enough, because SAP or ERP is very complex, and to work in the agile way with SAP requires really experience and very good preparation and consideration, as we said. So when the client said, okay, I sent all my team to the agile training and they did also some other training, so we are good to go, it's not the case. You really need to do a very good preparation of the scope definition and of the planning of all these rituals or ceremonies, and you may also need to tailor it to your individual context, so you don't need to just go 100% by the book. The other topic is the product owner. So you know this role, or you may have heard about this role in the context of the agile methodology. So this role needs really kind of empowerment to really define a direction, also the strategic direction. Also, what Toby said at the beginning in the capability discussion, at the very beginning of the roadmap, and that this role and this person associated to this role can really drive the strategic thinking and not just trying to reflect the status quo, the current solution or current process thinking. And also, this person needs to be empowered by his or her management to take decisions about the scope of the solution. The last topic is the Scrum team composition. So when we look at the non-ERP projects, like Spotify engineering or any others, there's always a mix of people in the Scrum teams, people doing the process, the functional and development. In the bigger organizations running SAP already, running ERP, it's not often possible to delegate the developers or 100% work in the sprint. So you need to really be very selective and very specific. When do you need developers? You have 3, 5 developers, or maybe 10. They also work on the maintenance or the production tickets of the old system. And you cannot say, okay, I will take one developer and place him or place her for 3 waves for 36 weeks into the Scrum process, because they have also other obligations. So you really need to see how you compose the teams, and when you really need to address the needs for developers, especially in this SAP context of so-called RISEPs, or the development objects, or process integration, so the integration with the different satellite systems. The second block is the scope and backlog definition, like I said at the beginning. When you start, you usually start with a kind of process model. So many companies have a process model level 1 to 3 or 2 to 4 with the end-to-end processes, order to cash, record to report, purchase to pay, you name it, and then they go, of course, to the level 3 or 4. So they very often take it as a structure, and I think this is a good approach, but it's not enough. You need to also plan other epics and other stories which lay foundations for all those process-related user stories and epics. So you always have this foundational configurations in the system, or key design decisions which are not always related to certain process but impact all processes. You can say, for instance, the org structure definition, the org model, or in the finance decision on controlling area, for instance, or purchasing organization, whether it is one per whole company, one per company code, etc. You need to also place it in the epics and user stories somehow, whether it is sprint 1 or 0. But they are not really linked to the processes, because they impact basically all processes or scenarios in the individual end-to-end areas. The next topic is the cross-stream work. So very often we see that the epics and user stories are only used for the process and applications, of really for the core, be it S4, be it Oracle or Microsoft ERP system, and only those streams, so functional streams, are working in this Scrum mode, whereas the other streams, be it infrastructure, data migration, reporting, or others, they work in the different mode, and you see then a disconnect because they have a completely different tact, they completely different rhythm and completely different planning, and those plans are not integrated, and then you end up with the ready-to-use user stories or tested user stories, but then you are missing the integration. And when moving from the agile component back into waterfall, into system integration test or user acceptance test, then you are missing those big components of data availability, data readiness, or infrastructure readiness. The third point I already discussed at the beginning, the interim scenarios, very important not to forget, and also do it quite early in the process, because they are also time consuming. Yeah, I already commented on the fourth point, the confusion between the different levels of the backlog hierarchy, whether it is epic, user stories, etc. And also a bit confusion or lacking the definition of done criteria, because different user story types can have different definition of done criteria. You have a RISEP or configuration, or a study or a spike user story, then you expect completion of user story bringing you a different result. And this has to be clearly communicated at the beginning. Then we also have seen that there are some projects which only start with user stories, so they don't want to do any epics, no interim levels, and just enter the user story world and start to planning, do some linking into processes. Then it is difficult to manage the structure, because you don't know what is happening on the higher level. You cannot prioritize on the higher level of detail, like epic or process scenario. The next point we already mentioned, the governance is very important, especially across the streams, because the streams in the agile principle, they have also a freedom to manage their work, yet they need to have also support and governance. So like Toby said at the beginning, that the management knows what is happening, if there is a readiness to move to the next stage, because in the ERP we still need to think about the stage gates. And the last point here is the KDD, so the key design decision, and also high integration topics. So sorry to use acronyms here, but then it would not fit into the page. So the key design decisions, like we said at the beginning, whether it is the decision on the purchase organization or controlling or chart of account or organizational model or selection of the MDG approach or master data approach, they have to be addressed on approach very early. And we typically hear, okay, let's put them in the sprint 0 because this is the good place to do. But the sprint 0 is usually shorter than the other sprints. It takes 2 or 3 weeks. So it may be too short time for those big topics because they usually required a lot of iteration with business stakeholders, decision paper, some internal politics as well, etc. So they need to be addressed already in the explore phase, so before really getting into sprints, if possible. Then the last block is the planning and execution. So on the execution, we see that just having the planning and doing the kickoff and letting the Scrum teams work may not be sufficient. So they may require a kind of hand-holding by an agile coach or Scrum master. And we typically see for the more complex projects, you would need to have one Scrum master supporting or hand-holding 2 or 3 functional or process streams for the first 2 or 3 streams until they get really this working routine, communication and transparency in the reporting, and also they get into the rhythm that basically every day they have to work and meet and reflect. So that's very important. Then the topic of the process first, also important thing is to understand this process layer. And that would be a very good candidate for the sprint 1 to really have this process groundwork done when not done before. Of course, the third point, again, seems to be easy and understood, but not very often done. So this representative test data, I think here the good practice is also to align across teams and build really a representative test data set for everyone, which can be reused and replicated easily, versus allowing everyone to experiment with the data. And especially in the template or core model build phase, you don't have any migrated data. You don't do big scale data migration. So that's why you need to invest in this, also in the kind of cross-functional alignment. Okay, can you see my screen? Yes. And the next point is the fragmented process and solution. So this is again related to the governance or missing governance. And because very often the kind of end-to-end concept or blueprints are skipped because everyone wants to be agile and just start working, then we see that this end-to-end understanding and concepts are missing. And then everyone is designing and building something for himself and herself. And then when there is an integration sprint, or in the worst case, integration test, after the agile part, you move on to the waterfall one, then you see that the pieces of puzzle really don't fit together. And the last point, a little bit related to the tooling. So we also see many clients embark on Jira, and Stephanie also mentioned Jira as a tool, or Jira. So they are quite well versed and happy with the tool and with the epics and user stories. And someday they have to move to the waterfall, to the SIT or UAT when they are in the rollout mode, and also need to have the business user on the system. And there is very often a disconnect or a break between the Jira, which works on the user story level, and the management tool, test management tool, which is rather focused on the end-to-end process scenarios. And you need to find some manual bridging or manual work to ensure that you have a requirement traceability. So what you really wanted to develop has been developed and accepted, and also integratively tested. Okay, any question, comment to that? I don't see any raised hand and any new comment in the chat. So with this, I would move to the next page. So it's about the references or project examples.
I think with respect to timing, we might want to pick just two, and the other ones we give as handout.
Okay.
A very interesting project we are developing since 5-6 years is this one. Actually, it started with an initial adjustment of an ERP project, but then it has grown into really an end-to-end transformation for this Swiss headquartered client. They decided to deliver services towards the end customer instead of going through dealers and dealerships for this land machine distribution. And this was enabled by an initial ERP project and enabling the system to sell services. But then over time, it developed to a whole organizational transformation where the different brands had to deliver a new go-to-market strategy, has to identify collaboration networks with different dealers. They had to develop a new brand strategy, and all of this was done initially in very siloed organizations with the significant misalignment. And over the last 3-4 years, they have started to develop really an agile organization, and the critical success factor was to bring together business, IT, and brands into a Scrum team that is following a joint target, and where they have really product increment planning in a collaborative way across the different originally very siloed entities and functions within the organization. And that was a very great success story, which now continues also outside of Switzerland, Germany. We are now targeting Nordics and next year US. And that was really inspiring how the ERP initial enablement really turned into a transformation program and merged together the different functions into an agile organization. Martin, maybe you want to pick one of your references, and I think then we have to hand back.
Yes, I will pick up on this one. So that's one of the major grocery retailers in Germany. They started a major transition to S4. They have decided to go for a brownfield because of the complexity and also duration of the project. They said they first want to migrate to a new, clean, technically clean SAP solution, and they will tackle the transformation, the business transformation improvements later. So that was their decision. And of course, they had multiple preparation projects. They had MDG, the business partner, the condition contract management, the retail store preparation, because they wanted to change the retail store application or the user interface for thousands of the shops. And they had several countries, so they decided to have this brownfield country by country. And the challenges you can imagine by the magnitude of the organization. One thing is that their current or the old system, because they have completed the migration, was very much customized with a lot of development, a lot of interfaces, also non-standard interfaces. So they had to perform a huge cleanup work. So the whole program duration was about around 2 to 3 years, and only 2 years was the preparation phase, really the technical check, the addressing all the RISE, all the developments, ABAP queries, everything, to check if they will be working in S4 or they have to be reworked. They had a high technical debt as well, so they had to address that one. They had very fixed migration dates, so after they did the planning, they had really only selected weekends in the last year which were available for the migration, and there was no possibility to move those dates at all, so they had to really stick to the due dates. And because of that, they had also the very high work on the program managers. Partially, they had inexperienced project managers on some part projects or sub projects. And because of the magnitude of organization, and this is what I commented already, is they had this topic with the resource availability and conflicts or priority conflicts, that some key resources, especially on the technology side, that were pulled out by the other projects without any previous notice. So they were confronted in technical phases with some resource shortages. And what we did together, we said, okay, let's see first this transformation office or project management office, if it can be improved to free up the time for the program management and the project manager to do the value added tasks. So that was very important, that they can focus really on taking decisions and taking actions versus understanding or trying to understand what is the project status, where we are, what is really the issue, what are the KPIs, are they right, are they wrong. So that was really important. And also they had to improve on the resource planning. As I said, was not done with passion, again, because of the tools and processes, but somehow they at least started doing the key resource planning. So they avoided this topic of surprises with the missing resources, and test approach, even if it was suggested by one of the major implementation partners, it had to be reviewed and also refined, because there were significant parts missing in the testing approach. And then we also provided the coaching for the less experienced project managements. It took like several weeks or 2-3 months, especially in the critical project phases. So the project managers in those critical projects could learn a little bit. They could sharpen their skills and also improve their transparency in the project structures. And last but not least, it was very important also to implement really the end-to-end risk and issue management, because initially projects were maintaining their issues and risks, and they were not surfacing the program level. So sometimes the program management was surprised with the magnitude of risk and issues which were not really communicated upwards. Okay.
Yeah.
Toby, I think we are finished with the slides.
Yeah, I think we have to hand back, because
Exactly.
We are over time.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been very, very interesting topic. We really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. So now I'll share my slide, and then we will see whether participants have more questions. If you'd like to ask your questions, here is your opportunity to ask Martin and Tobias, if you have any questions. Don't be shy, you can ask questions. So Patrick just raised his hand. So Patrick, please, you can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Hello, thank you for answering my questions earlier. I've got perhaps if you could comment, Tobias or Martin, I really appreciate that. How much of S4 implementations are driven by the fact that SAP is just forcing a new system and is stopping the support on the old system, versus how much do businesses actually want? It's actually businesses coming up with the idea, yeah, actually we need something completely new. Let's see what's on the market. Oh, SAP for HANA's on the market. Can you give some sort of idea of the balance between that? I mean, I'm especially kind of motivated by the fact that you gave the example of the retail customer who's first doing the IT transformation, and then are going to look at the business needs. So don't know if you could comment that perhaps.
Toby, you start, and I can.
Yeah, we have looked into our client base based on industry, and we see a little bit differences between the different industries. For example, in the industries where over the recent years, like the last 3-5 years, there was a significant investment into IT. For example, in pharmaceuticals or healthcare. Also retail industries, you see more the tendency to do a fast upgrade rather than a transformation, because it's more this feeling, oh, we have invested very recently, we have a good base, and probably what we need is even outside of the ERP environment. In other industries, for example, automotive suppliers, some manufacturing industrial equipment companies, they have not invested in the recent years so heavily into ERP processes, but now they are forced to change dramatically the way they work, like electrification in the automotive and supplier industry, strong regulation that is coming up in this industry requires a different thinking of processes, and the enforcement of collaboration for engineering and construction work requires a complete set of new processes. So in there, it's more the opposite, that more clients are tending to say, I invent something completely new. And that is a little bit dependent on the industry. What's the starting point?
Yes, in addition to that, I think many automotive suppliers or engineering companies have done a lot of M&A activities, a lot of acquisitions, and with this they acquired multiple ERP platforms. So several of our clients, and of course that's just a sample of clients where AdEx is present, they had all kinds of systems. So they had SAP old versions, they had Microsoft, they had Infor or BAN even, etc. So really they have to, so even they are not willing to go to SAP. Sometimes they are asking about alternatives to SAP, given they magnitude. They have to get rid of those multiple systems because they see also operational issues and the problem with the scalability of the business or the business model transformation. So they take this as a chance versus only technical transformation. But there are some others who said, okay, we have a clean system. We just migrated our multiple systems onto one ECC. We have done upgrade to EHP 8. We are clean, we're good. And our priority is CRM and big data. And let's wait till 2030. Let's pay maybe additional maintenance fee to SAP, but it's definitely lower than spending another 20 million euros on another ERP implementation. So it's also the wait and see approach.
Okay.
But it's a very colorful bunch of clients, I would call it.
Yeah, probably as many different use cases
Absolutely.
as
Absolutely.
businesses? Okay, thank you.
A lot depends on this starting position.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for your
Thanks.
question. And thank you, Marcin, for clarifying that, for answering that question. So do we have any more questions? We will wait just a few, probably a minute or so, and see if there are more questions. Or if you are not comfortable in saying your questions verbally, you can type them on the chat, please.
I see
right.
one question in the chat, which is, have you been involved in in-house developed ERP implementation? Is there any major difference from other known ERPs?
Great, interesting question. Would you care to answer that question, Tobias or Marcin?
Yeah, I personally have done transformations from custom-built ERP systems into standardized ones, because at the end of the day, a lot of the ERP processes are not really differentiating in a way that you really make top line growth with it. And for this reason, more and more companies and clients are moving away from large custom built developments for standard warehouse, standard financial, standard purchasing functionality. Only in these areas where you have a differentiation, they tend to develop own applications, own functionalities, for example, leveraging microservices environments, building composed applications where you can hook up really industry or customer specific functionality in this regard. Marcin, from your side to add?
Yeah, so I have not been involved in the custom ERP development project. However, I was working on one project with the SAP implementation where I thought maybe it's just better to buy a HANA database and the technology stack and the development platform and then start building everything from the scratch, because the level of customization of the standard SAP was that high. So a kind of standard implementation turned into a kind of huge custom development project. So I think they missed a bit the purpose of standardization.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for answering that question. If you have any further questions, please type them on the chat, and we will send them. We will send the answers via post-event email. So please, you can still type your questions, and then they will be sent after. The answers will be sent afterwards. So here is our organizing team. Of course, that's me on the left-hand side, and then I have my colleagues, Adi Muslik and Leandro Bender, who helped me, who supported me with this event. Yeah, they've been super amazing supporting me with all the organization, the preparation. And here is our upcoming events for PMI. So we have the Zurich Networking Apero on the 16th of March, and Plain Strategy Planning 16th also on March, but please note one will be in Zurich and one would be in Lausanne. And we also have the Project Management Networking after work in Lausanne, so that would be on the 21st of March. And we have a masterclass, 2 days masterclass. That we have another event as well, the role of evaluation in project management, that will be in Geneva. event as well. That would be in Basel on the 6th of April. So if you would like to attend any of these, please go on our PMI Switzerland website, and all the information will be there for registration. Or you can check our social media sites as well for further information. And if you would like to become a volunteer, here is the information. You can contact our HR. I am one of the volunteers as well, and I can tell you, I couldn't be more happier. I have learned so many skills. I've met amazing colleagues who we are like one big family. So I would really encourage anyone who wants to volunteer to volunteer for PMI. So you can contact our HR team, or you can contact one of us on LinkedIn directly, and we will lead you to the right person. And please don't forget to follow us on social media. So many thanks to our speakers, Tobias and Marcin, for this wonderful, wonderful keynote speech. We really, really enjoyed it, and you've given us so much information. I believe that the event, the attendees also enjoyed it very well. So thank you. We really appreciate.
Thank you for inviting us for this meeting.
Thank you. So thank you to our attendees. You've been so wonderful. You always supporting us, always attending our events. Thank you so much for joining us. And together we learn, we continue learning. So thank you very much. We will see you again on the next event. And one more time, thank you to our wonderful sponsors, AdEx Partners. Of course, they are the one who also Marcin and Tobias, they are AdEx Partner. They are AdEx Partner. They work in AdEx Partner. So they've been so amazing. They are our sponsors as well. So we thank them very much for supporting us all this while.
Okay.
So meant to give us some feedback on how we did on this event. So here is the link, and also you can scan the QR code. My colleague would also send the link via the chat. And please let us know how we can make this, how we can improve in our future events. We will really appreciate it. And now for all PMI members, here is the PDU code, client code at the bottom here. So if you like to claim your PDU code, please, you can use this number here where it says claim PDU codes. So you can use that number and claim your PDU codes. Also, my colleague will send that via chat for your convenience. Okay, so I guess that is all today. Thank you so much for everyone who attended this event, and thank you again to our speakers and of course my colleagues who supported me. Thank you very much, and I wish you a lovely evening, and we'll see you again on the next event. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.